Chapter 1. The Morning Rush. The alarm blared at 6 a.m., sharp and unforgiving. Emma groaned and slapped her hand across the screen, silencing the digital scream. She laid still for a moment, the darkness of early morning cloaking her in a temporary peace. But within seconds, her mind clicked into motion. The emails, the meetings, the client deadline, the grocery list, the unread messages from her mom, the bills. She sat up quickly. No time to dwell, no time to breathe. Within 10 minutes, Emma was dressed in black slacks and a navy blouse, hair tied into a half-hearted bun. She shoved her laptop into her tote bag, grabbed a protein bar, and gave her cat, Mochi, a rushed pat on the head. The commute blurred by in a haze of scrolling and sipping. Her thumb darted across Slack messages as her bus jerked through traffic. Her face reflected in the smudged window, eyes dull, skin pale, posture tense. By the time she arrived at the downtown office tower, her shoulders were already aching. "Morning, Emma," chirped Zoe from HR as they passed each other in the lobby. "Hey!" Emma forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Elevator, desk, screen, keyboard, meetings, notes, deadlines. At 10:12 a.m., she realized she hadn't drunk her coffee. It was cold. At 1:36 p.m., she skipped lunch again. "Just finish this deck first," she muttered to herself. Her stomach grumbled, ignored. At 5:45 p.m., she received a Slack message. "Client moved our deadline to tomorrow. Can you revise the proposal by EOD?" She stared at it, hands frozen above the keyboard. Of course she could. She always could. She stayed until 8:15 p.m., eyes burning. When she finally got home, the apartment was dark. Mochi meowed, annoyed and hungry. Emma microwaved leftover rice, scrolled TikTok mindlessly, and collapsed into bed without showering. Her brain buzzed. She had done everything right, but she felt completely wrong. Chapter 2. The Breaking Point. It started with a forgotten meeting. On a Tuesday morning, Emma opened her calendar and realized too late that she'd missed a strategy call with a major partner. Her blood ran cold. She cursed under her breath and dialed in late, apologizing profusely. But her manager's tone was clipped. "Emma, we need reliability. Are you sure you're okay?" She nodded into the camera, smiling tightly. "Yes, just a glitch in my schedule." That was a lie. The truth was, she had barely slept the night before. Her chest had felt heavy. She kept checking the clock. 2 a.m., 3:30 a.m., 4:17 a.m. After the call, she stood in the restroom, gripping the edge of the sink. Her reflection looked unfamiliar. Red eyes, trembling lips. She splashed water on her face. "Get it together," she whispered. "Just a rough week." But it wasn't just a rough week. It had been months. At lunch, Ava from Content stopped by her desk. "Hey, we're grabbing sushi. You in?" She hesitated. The spreadsheet blinked at her, accusingly. "I can't. Need to catch up on edits." Ava frowned. "Emma, you haven't had lunch with us in like 3 weeks. I'm just in the zone today." Another lie. That evening, the bus was crowded and loud. Emma couldn't breathe. The noise, the lights, the push of people. Her chest tightened. Her vision blurred. By the time she stumbled into her apartment, she collapsed on the couch. Her hands shook as she tried to unlock her phone. Messages, notifications, work emails. And then, finally, silence. Her phone dropped from her hands. She began to cry. Deep, racking sobs that came from somewhere too tired to care. Mochi jumped onto the couch and curled beside her. Emma whispered into the fur, "I don't know how to do this anymore." That night, she didn't open her laptop. She didn't check Slack. She just laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering when surviving had replaced living. Chapter 3. The Question. Saturday morning arrived gently. The light seeped in through the gaps in Emma's blackout curtains, creating soft beams across the carpet. For the first time in weeks, there was no alarm, no buzzing phone, no urgency. Only silence. A quiet so foreign that it made her uncomfortable. She sat on her couch in a worn hoodie and pajama pants, Mochi curled against her leg. A steaming mug of tea sat on the coffee table. Not coffee, tea. That alone felt like rebellion. She stared at her open journal, pen hovering over the page. She hadn't written in months. The pages were filled with old to-do lists, half-finished ideas. But now she flipped to a fresh sheet and wrote one question in bold. What do I want? It was a simple question, but her brain didn't know how to answer. She sipped her tea slowly. The warmth helped, but the silence didn't. Her thoughts were too loud. Did she want a promotion? No, at least not in the way things were now. Did she want to quit? Possibly. But then what? Travel? Start something new? Take a break? She didn't even know what kind of life she wanted. She glanced at her bookshelf, cluttered with self-help books and unread novels. Her yoga mat collected dust in the corner. The paints her best friend gave her for her birthday last year were still unopened. What had she sacrificed in her climb toward success? Creativity, friendships, health, family, herself. Her phone buzzed again. She flinched. "Ava, brunch at noon. You better come. No excuses." Emma smiled faintly. Ava always knew when to step in. She replied, "I'll be there." Brunch was noisy, lively, real. People laughing, dishes clinking, toasts being made. Emma arrived late, but Ava greeted her with open arms and an iced coffee already waiting. "You look like you survived something," Ava said, inspecting her friend. "I did." "Was it the Q4 deck or an existential crisis?" Emma laughed, the first real laugh in days. "Both." They talked for 2 hours. Emma confessed everything. The panic attack, the exhaustion, the fear of losing herself. Ava didn't judge. She just listened. "You need to reset. Not a vacation, a real reset. Something radical." Emma widened her eyes. "Like quit my job?" Ava shrugged. "Or at least start figuring out what your life could look like if it didn't revolve around KPIs and Slack threads." That night, Emma stood at her window watching the city lights. Her journal was in her lap, the question still on the page. What do I want? She didn't have the answer yet, but for the first time, she was willing to find out. Chapter 4. The Reset. Emma didn't quit, not immediately, but she made changes. She spoke to HR and requested a temporary leave of absence, a 2-month break to deal with burnout-related health issues. She was surprised when they approved it. Maybe they'd seen this coming too. The first week was hard. Her fingers twitched to check emails. She still woke up at 6:30, expecting alarms. She felt guilty resting. She kept wondering if she was being lazy. But little by little, her body adjusted. She began to walk in the mornings just to feel the air. She sat in parks. She read novels, books with no business value. She cooked. She took naps. She listened to music while doing nothing. Mochi approved. She enrolled in a 6-week watercolor course at the local community center. At first she felt clumsy. Her hands didn't obey her imagination, but by week 3, she found joy in the mess of colors. She called her parents every Sunday. She had dinner with her sister and niece. She went dancing with Ava. It felt like getting her soul back, piece by piece. One rainy afternoon, while painting alone in her apartment, Emma looked out the window and smiled. Not because everything was fixed, but because she could finally breathe. Chapter 5. The Offer. By week 7, she received an email from her boss. "We'd love to bring you back for Q3 planning. Remote options available. Let's talk." She stared at the message for a long time. Her heartbeat remained calm, a sign of growth. Still, the email brought mixed feelings. She discussed it with Ava over coffee. "You could go back," Ava said, "but only if you want to, on your terms." "What if I don't know what those terms are yet?" "Then you don't say yes yet." Emma didn't reply to the email. Instead, she drafted a list, things she needed in any future job. Creative freedom, flexible hours, a team that values mental health, time to paint, rest, and live. The list surprised her. It was clear, specific. It felt real. She met with her boss the next week, in a cafe, not a Zoom room. She laid out her expectations. To her surprise, her manager didn't push back. "Honestly, we need to change too. You're not the only one who's burned out." Chapter 6. The Rebuild. Emma returned part-time, 3 days a week, remote, no after-hours slack. She became the example HR used in their new wellness policy. She also launched a side project, a digital art blog where she posted her watercolors and wrote about balance, burnout, and boundaries. It gained attention fast. Comments poured in from people who saw themselves in her words. She began giving talks about her experience, not the polished kind with graphs, but real stories, honest truths. Her inbox shifted, fewer client demands, more thank you notes from strangers. She felt useful again, in a different way. Chapter 7. The New Normal. 6 months later, Emma lived differently. She still worked, still had goals, but her days had space. Mornings started with tea. Weekends were sacred. Her niece visited often, and they painted together. She and Ava began co-hosting a podcast called Reclaiming the Clock, short weekly chats about time, identity, and healing from hustle culture. Emma didn't have it all figured out. Some days were still hard, but now she noticed the sky. She felt her breath. She knew what she wanted. Chapter 8. The Balance. It was a year after her panic attack. Emma sat in the same apartment, but it felt different, lighter, more alive. She opened her journal to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote, "Balance is not a destination. It's a daily choice." She closed her eyes, listening to the quiet, the birds outside, the hum of city life. Mochi purred beside her. She smiled and breathed. Thanks for watching. Take action today, not tomorrow. Press subscribe. And let's keep learning together. You're doing great. See you in the next one. Stay strong.